We welcome our first guest, Romanian-American writer Maria-Cristina Necula, who also serves as the Director of Alumni Engagement here at Lehman College. And we're going to talk about her memoir. In her memoir, The Voice Beneath the Quince Tree, she shares her story of growing up in communist Romania, told from the perspective of her younger self, taking readers on a journey of resilience, survival, child wonderment, and discovery of the arts. And here now to share more is Lehman College's Director of Alumni Engagement and The Voice Beneath the Quince Tree, a memoir of growing up in communist Romania, author Maria-Cristina Necula. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we're so looking forward to diving into the details of this fabulous book called The Voice Beneath the Quince Tree. The quince tree itself is, I want to say, an anomaly for us here in America, right? It's not a common tree, right? So I'm going to assume it's reminiscent of being in Bucharest, right?
Yes, and even for Romania, I wouldn't say it's very, very common, but it was in the backyard of my house. It grew there. So I grew up with it, around that tree, and it became like a playmate for me. I'll play around it, yeah.
And so I have a thing with trees on a personal level, and so to know that you basically dedicated this book to a tree, because you're paying homage to a tree, right? Even though it was your companion, and we're going to get into the story, this is the companion that you were able to play with and just exchange energy with, and probably even release whatever it is that you were suppressing without even knowing, right? So let's talk a little bit about the story behind your childhood and your transition into America.
So I grew up in communist Romania in the mid-'80s, and it was a very, very oppressive society. My father escaped. He defected, and it's a really long story, but he got to the U.S., and because he defected, we were considered the family of traitors, right? Undesirables. That was a crime. And so there was a whole period of persecution that happened over 2.5 years before my mom and I were actually able to get out of Romania. And during that time, she took me to the opera because really there was nothing to do. There was a lot of scarcity, oppression. The program on TV was like 2 hours of the dictator's speeches and communist movies. So we went to the opera, and I was mesmerized. It was so fascinating to me as a kid, and that became like this magic portal of escape during that time of difficulty and oppression, and frankly, not knowing whether we were going to see my father again. So I grew up in this kind of dichotomy of being in an oppressive regime and yet finding this magic world of opera, plus my own imagination. And I would play around the Quince tree, and I would attempt to sing, but I had a horrible voice. They used to call me Donald Duck, or like a heavy smoker or something. I could not hold a tune. So I would try to attempt to sing to the tree. It was my audience.
Right, the tree was your play companion,
Yes.
and your audience,
Yeah.
right? And it's interesting that you say you couldn't sing, you were 10 years old at the time, but then eventually you found your voice, according to the book, right?
Yes.
And not only that, you became familiar with the actual performers of the opera, right? So, okay, so the book itself is, it's definitely, I don't know how you were able to like revisit a time in such detail. That's right, because I can kind of feel like you as a child are being there with you and understanding the innocence and the shielding that was happening, but yet knowing that there was something off, right? Because like you said, in the book, I read most of it, right? I did as best as I could, having it handed to me, with just a little bit of time. And I read that, your dad left, and that was for like 2 years. And for 2 years, you didn't understand as a child why he would leave you, right? And because you didn't understand, you didn't grasp the concept of him moving to find a better possibility for you and your mom. But you had to survive in that time, and your survival was through the opera, right? And in that, there's a lot of this as you mentioned, this feeling of being undesirable as a child. I can't imagine what that must feel like, what that must have felt like, and not understanding it.
I think the hardest part, like you said, to understand was, why did my father leave? And I was so close to him, you know, being an only child, and he was always the fun parent. And why did he leave? For me, was incomprehensible at 10. Plus that I thought that our life, that's the only life I knew in Romania, and it was fun. I had friends, I had my garden, I had my cats, everything. So that was the biggest shock. And then all of a sudden, even though my mom tried to shield me from the terror of it all, because we were being followed and she was interrogated, but she would never tell me any of that. She would try to protect my innocence. Children sense these things. You pick up on the terror. I picked up on her fear, you know. So I didn't think about it consciously, but now writing it, it just made me realize, how did we go through that? How did, you know, how did we get through it all? And as a kid too.
And then moving to the United States, and not really speaking English, and being greeted by your dad, who was speaking to you in English, right?
Yeah, he was speaking Romanian too, but he was trying to get me to speak English more too. But the biggest shock was landing in 7th grade, and a funny story was that I didn't know, I mean, I took hot dog literally. I actually thought that people ate hot dogs here.
Right.
So I went home crying because I didn't know what it meant.
Right.
Until I found out. So there were a lot of funny moments at the time that to me were shocking too.
And I mean, your story is really inspiring. Really, it is.
Thank you.
It really
Thank
is. What I didn't mention is that you have a PhD as well.
Thank you.
In literature, no less, right?
Yes, because I pursued the opera path after that, but I got to sing. I got to have like a small career.
But you sang at Carnegie Hall.
I sang at Carnegie Hall. Yes.
Come on, that's an accomplishment.
Thank you. But what happened is writing was also developing in parallel, so that took over my life. And then when I did the PhD at the Graduate Center, also CUNY product right here.
All right.
I thought comparative literature, opera is based on literature. I can bring my two loves together. So writing, opera, literature, it all came together in that wonderful place.
And that's kind of like what you did with this book, right? But you also write for magazines as well, right?
Yes.
And so, what do you hope people leave with? Let's say somebody who may not be familiar with operas, who may not be familiar with the history behind communist Romania. What do you hope that people leave with in experiencing it from your perspective, from your lens?
I think first the idea of gratitude and keeping things in perspective, because I always draw back on that time when I'm faced with challenges in life or things, and I always think, if I survive that, this is nothing, or this is manageable, let's say. That's one thing. And the other thing is the arts. I mean, the arts are so crucial. They can be a source of strength, defiance, protest, anything you want. So I think it would help if people saw that at different levels, people who can implement that in schools much more, expose kids to the art at an early age, because it just makes you, it's a way of expressing yourself and also finding this kind of comfort and refuge.
And not only in the multidisciplinary fashion, the multicultural aspect of it as well, because that's what we're about here in the United States. We're really about finding our similarities within our differences. And I love using that phrase, because it's like, as sad as it is to say, and where we are now, there's a lot of things that are relatable in your book.
And I'm
in our reality right now.
Yes, exactly. And I'm so happy you said that. I wasn't conscious of how well it matches reality right now. But now I realize that it's also a cautionary tale. What happens when an ideology, right, like communism, which on paper for Marx and Engels, and they may have looked okay, like the ideal way to live life, but that when you take it into practice, and it could become monstrous, and sacrifice so many people to it. So that's cautionary. You know, it's so easy to slip into that.
I love that you say your words. You're choosing your words very cautiously.
Cautiously. Caution is the word of the day, right? Yeah.
But it really is, and it also loans itself to hope because it's really a matter of perspective. It's really a matter of choosing what you're going to focus on, and that's what your book actually shares. It's like you went and immersed yourself in opera, and you found you found solace in that, and whether you realize it or not, it was therapeutic, and it allowed you to create a possibility and land you in the direction of what you visualized, and you built a whole life around it, even though it's through books and writing.
It's so beautiful that you say that, because I always had this little bit of, sadness maybe that I did not become an opera singer, which was my dream at that time. But there was a moment at the Metropolitan Opera when my dissertation got published, and it was about an opera and how it's based on literature. And I walk in at an opera premiere and I see my book in the gift shop. So that was for me the moment when I said, well, I'm not here on the stage, but at least I can contribute something to this art form that has given me so much, and saved us in a way. Saved our sanity, saved our humanity. So
I love it. That's a wonderful conclusion, because for me, that represents the language of the world, right? That
Music.
was a kiss. That was a kiss from the universe. No, I'm talking about your book.
Oh, my book. Thank
being
you.
at the opera.
Thank you.
That it doesn't get any better than that. Like, as far as being kissed by the universe or God, whatever your beliefs are.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And we thank you for bringing it here. And we thank you for the service that you offer here on Lehman campus. And once again, everyone, we're speaking to Maria-Cristina Necula, and the Voice Beneath the Quince Tree memoir of growing up in communist Romania is available now on Amazon. And it's definitely a nice, soothing read, so I highly recommend that you really consider it, right? And once again, for more on Cristina, you can visit Maria-CristinaNecula.com. All right, stay tuned. There's more open when we return.